We're a fun bunch. I mean, we really are.
Rock and roll is a wide spectrum.
From a one-man project to an international sensation, Foo Fighters are the epitome of hard rock. Over the course of their illustrious career, Foo Fighters have won 12 Grammy Awards, including Best Rock Album 4 times.
Like, we still feel like this. And I can honestly say that we have more fun than any other band in the world. I think it's true.
After almost 3 decades of success, everything came to a screeching halt on March 25th, 2022. Concerns about long-term drummer Taylor Hawkins' health first arose on Friday night when he began complaining of chest pains prior to the band's headline performance at the Estéreo Picnic Festival in Bogota. His condition deteriorated quickly, and efforts to revive him by a private doctor and city emergency responders failed.
It wasn't just like starting a band. It wasn't just like putting some guys together with instruments. We were young and we were not finished playing music. But more than that, we just needed something to look forward to.
The story of the Foo Fighters begins in 1990 in Aberdeen, Washington, with a completely different band, a little grunge band called Nirvana. Singer and guitarist Kurt Cobain and bassist Chris Novoselic met while attending Aberdeen High School in Washington State. The pair became friends while frequenting the practice space of the Melvins. Cobain gave Novoselic a demo tape of his project Fecal Matter. 3 years after the two first met, Novoselic listened to the demo and suggested they start a band together. Their first band, The Sellouts, was a Creedence Clearwater Revival tribute act. The project featured Novoselic on guitars and vocals, Cobain on drums, and Steve Newman on bass. After a short time, however, the project fell through. In early 1987, Cobain and Novoselic recruited drummer Aaron Burkhart. They practiced material from Cobain's Fecal Matter tape, but started writing new material soon after forming. After the release of Bleach in June 1989, the relationships in the band were becoming increasingly frayed. Cobain and Novoselic became disenchanted with Channing's drumming, and Channing expressed frustration at not being involved in songwriting. As bootlegs of Nirvana's demos with Vig began to circulate in the music industry and draw attention from major labels, Channing left the band. That July, Nirvana recorded the single Sliver with Mudhoney drummer Dan Peters. Dale Crover filled in on drums on Nirvana's 7-date American West Coast tour with Sonic Youth that August.
You know, you were conditioned to reject any sort of commerciality or conformity, any sort of like top 40 radio, things like that. So then when your band becomes popular, like, what do you do? Like, how do you reconcile those two things, or how do you justify that, you know? And it's difficult. I mean, it's one of the things that really affected Nirvana. None of us ever thought that we were going to be this gigantic band. We were perfectly comfortable in our little corner of the underground, doing it the way we'd always done it. But unfortunately, Kurt's songs were so good that millions and millions of people connected to it. And so you could either see it as a blessing or a celebration, or you could see it as some sort of curse. And there's this weird guilt and shame in that, which I think is really dangerous. I think it's dangerous because when you were young on your bedroom floor, there was no guilt then. When you were learning to play an instrument or learning to write songs, there's no guilt then.
In September 1990, Buzz Osborne of the Melvins introduced the band to drummer Dave Grohl, whose Washington, D.C. band Scream had broken up. Grohl auditioned for Novoselic and Cobain days after arriving in Seattle. Novoselic later said, "We knew in 2 minutes that he was the right drummer."
I mean, first of all, the house that I grew up in, I think it was too small to have a drum set. I couldn't fit a drum set in my bedroom, and my mother surely wouldn't allow me to have it in the living room. So I was learning how to play music by ear. So listening to Beatles records on my bedroom floor with a Beatles songbook, but without having a drum set, I would set up these pillows on my bedroom floor and I would play along to records. I kind of came up with my idea of drumming and how it should be done. It's like wild with inconsistencies, and I'm sure there's plenty of things that drum teachers would smack my hand for doing. But I appreciate doing it the way that I do it. I don't think I'm the greatest drummer in the world, but when I sit down at a drum set, I'll just pulverize it. It's kind of what I do.
During tours, he took a guitar with him and wrote songs, but was too intimidated to share them with the band. He was in awe of the songs written by frontman Kurt Cobain. Grohl occasionally booked studio time to record demos and covers, issuing an album of demos, Pocket Watch, under the pseudonym Late in 1992. Nirvana disbanded after the death of Cobain in 1994. Grohl received offers to work with various artists. Press rumors indicated he might join Pearl Jam, and he almost accepted a position as drummer in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Grohl later said, "I was supposed to just join another band and be a drummer the rest of my life. I thought that I would rather do what no one expected me to do." Grohl instead entered Robert Lang Studios in October 1994 to record 15 of his own songs. With the exception of a guitar part on Ecstatic, played by Greg Dooley of the Afghan Whigs, Grohl played every instrument and sang every vocal. He completed an album's worth of material in 5 days and handed out cassette copies of the sessions to his friends for feedback. Grohl hoped to stay anonymous and released the recordings in a limited run under the name Foo Fighters, taken from Foo Fighter, a World War II term for unidentified flying objects. He hoped the name would lead listeners to assume the music was made by several people. He said later, "Had I actually considered this to be a career, I probably would have called it something else, because it's the stupidest fucking band name in the world." The demo tape circulated in the industry, creating interest among record labels. Grohl formed a band to support the album. He spoke to Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic about joining the group. They decided against it. Grohl said it would have felt really natural for them to work together, but would have been weird for the others and placed more pressure on Grohl. Instead, Grohl recruited bassist Nate Mendel and drummer William Goldsmith, both of the recently disbanded Seattle group Sunny Day Real Estate. Nirvana touring guitarist Pat Smear joined as second guitarist. Grohl licensed the album to Capitol Records, releasing it on his new label, Roswell Records. Foo Fighters made their live public debut on February 23, 1995 at the Jambalaya Club in Arcata, California, followed by performances at Satyricon in Portland on March 3rd and the Velvet Elvis in Seattle on March 4th. Foo Fighters undertook their first major tour in the spring of 1995, opening for Mike Watt. The band's first single, This Is a Call, was released in June 1995, and its debut album, Foo Fighters, was released the next month. After touring through the spring of 1996, Foo Fighters entered Bear Creek Studio in Woodinville, Washington, with producer Gil Norton to record its second album. While Grohl once again wrote all the songs, the rest of the band collaborated on the arrangements. With the sessions nearly complete, Grohl took the rough mixes to Los Angeles, intending to finish his vocal and guitar parts. While there, Grohl realized that he was not happy with the drumming and replaced most of Goldsmith's drum tracks with his own. Though Grohl hoped that Goldsmith would still play on the tour, Goldsmith felt betrayed and left the band. In need of a replacement for Goldsmith, Grohl contacted Alanis Morissette's touring drummer Taylor Hawkins for a recommendation. Grohl was surprised when Hawkins volunteered himself. Hawkins made his debut with the group in time for the release of its second album, The Color and the Shape, in May 1997. The album included the massive singles Monkey Wrench, My Hero, and Walking After You. Smear left Foo Fighters in 1997, citing exhaustion and burnout, and was replaced by Grohl's former Scream bandmate Franz Stahl. Scream was a hardcore punk band formed in Virginia in 1981. At age 17, Grohl lied about his age in order to tour with the band and played drums on their third studio album. Stahl toured with the Foo Fighters for the next few months and appeared on 2 tracks recorded for movie soundtracks: a re-recording of Walking After You for The X-Files and A320 for Godzilla. A B-side from the My Hero single, Dear Lover, appeared in the horror film Scream 2.
You know, I only really recorded at Sound City once, and that was about right when I joined the band. And it was for some soundtrack or something like that. A song called A320 that we did for, I think, a Godzilla soundtrack back in '98 or whatever the fuck it was.
In 1998, Foo Fighters traveled to Grohl's home state of Virginia to write their third album. However, Grohl and Stahl were unable to cooperate as songwriters. Grohl told Kerrang! In 1999, "In those few weeks, it just seemed like the three of us were moving in one direction and Franz wasn't." Grohl was distraught over the decision to fire Stahl, as the two had been friends since childhood. Shortly afterwards, Mendel called Grohl to say he was quitting to reunite with Sunny Day Real Estate, only to reverse his decision the next day. The remaining trio of Grohl, Mendel, and Hawkins spent several months recording the band's third album, There Is Nothing Left to Lose, in Grohl's home studio. The album spawned several singles, including Learn to Fly, the band's first to reach the US Billboard Hot 100. Other singles included Stacked Actors, Generator, Next Year, and Breakout.
I've been to a couple of these parties, and we've played one as well. And I've covered this party many years in a row. It's funny because you come to this party and you think, wow, this is pretty hardcore. I can't wait till the Grammys tomorrow. And this sort of makes the Grammys look like a bar mitzvah. So this is a good one. I like this party. Yeah, have fun.
Before the release of the album, Capitol Records president Gary Gersh was forced out of the label. Given Grohl's history with Gersh, Foo Fighters' contract had included a key man clause that allowed them to leave the label upon Gersh's departure. They left Capitol and signed with RCA, who later acquired the rights to the band's Capitol albums. After recording There Is Nothing Left to Lose was completed, the band auditioned a number of potential guitarists and settled on Chris Shiflett, who performed with Me First and the Gimme Gimmes and California punk band No Use for a Name. Shiflett initially joined as a touring guitarist, but achieved full-time status prior to the recording of the group's fourth album. Around 2001, Foo Fighters established a relationship with rock band Queen, as the band, particularly Grohl and Hawkins, were fans. In March of that year, Grohl and Hawkins inducted them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and joined them to perform the 1976 classic Tie Your Mother Down, with Hawkins playing drums alongside Roger Taylor. Near the end of 2001, the band reconvened to record its fourth album. After spending 4 months in Los Angeles studio, the album just didn't sound right, and the band had no confidence it would sell very well. With the album not reaching their expectations amid much infighting, Grohl spent some time helping Queens of the Stone Age complete their 2002 album Songs for the Deaf. Once that album was finished and touring had started for both Foo Fighters and Queens of the Stone Age, the band was on the verge of breaking up entirely. Grohl reunited with Hawkins, Shiflett, and Mendel to play the Coachella Festival, alternating days with Queens of the Stone Age. Hawkins and Grohl talked about resuming work on One by One, and after a very satisfying performance the following day, they agreed to stay together. The group re-recorded nearly all of the album in a 10-day stretch at Grohl's home studio in Alexandria, Virginia, the following month. The original version of One by One, referred to by the band as $1 Million Demos, has never been released in its entirety, although 7 tracks were leaked online in 2012 and 2015. The album was released in October 2002 under the title One by One. Singles from the album included All My Life, Times Like These, Low, and have it all.
On and on, I got nothing to hide.
Having spent a year and a half touring behind One by One, Grohl did not want to rush into recording another Foo Fighters record. Initially, Grohl intended to write acoustic material by himself, but eventually the project involved the entire band. To record its fifth album, the band shifted to Los Angeles and built a recording studio dubbed Studio 606 West. Grohl insisted that the album be divided into 2 discs, one full of rock songs, the other featuring acoustic tracks. In Your Honor was released in June 2005. The album single includes Best of You, DOA, Resolve, and No Way Back, Cold Day in the Sun. During September and October 2005, the band toured with Weezer on what was billed as the Foozer Tour. On June 17, 2006, Foo Fighters performed their largest non-festival headlining concert to date at London's Hyde Park. Motorhead's Lemmy joined the band on stage to sing Shake Your Blood from Dave Grohl's Probot album.
You were like, no, it's a fucking secret, and everybody else is like, so you're here to present Zeppelin Award, huh? So I don't know if it's just that easy to guess, but yes, I'm presenting an award. I wrote a speech. I haven't written a speech since I ran for vice president of my freshman class.
Speaking of presidents,
which I won, by the way. I'm the least fashionable person you've ever met in your life. I wear jeans and t-shirt to work, and when I'm not working. So I actually got a GQ award once a long time ago, and it was fucking hilarious because I'm not a fashionable dude. And on the way to the ceremony, I got into this argument with my wife. She's like, what are you wearing? I'm like, nothing, I'm wearing jeans and t-shirt. She goes, you can't do that, it's the GQ Awards. I said, so? I'm a rock musician, I don't want to dress up in a suit. I said, I bet you Justin Timberlake won't wear a suit. She goes, I bet you he will. I said, okay, if he shows up in a suit, then you have to go. If he shows up in a suit, I'll walk up to him and be like, hi Justin, I'm your biggest fan. If he's wearing a jeans and t-shirt, then you have to do the same thing.
Now, when are we going to see you back in the studio, you guys?
Back in the studio? Fucking not anytime soon. Beat, man. Been on tour for 4 fucking years. I'm gonna go home.
For the follow-up to In Your Honor, the band recruited the color and the shape producer Gil Norton. Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace was released on September 25, 2007. The album's first single, The Pretender, was issued to radio in early August. In mid to late 2007, The Pretender topped Billboard's modern rock chart for a record 19 weeks. Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace was nominated for 5 Grammy Awards in 2008. Foo Fighters went home with Best Rock Album and Best Hard Rock Performance for The Pretender. The album was also nominated for Album of the Year, while The Pretender was also nominated for Record of the Year and Best Rock Song.
Yeah, when are you coming back to Montreal to sing?
When the ice goes away, I don't know, when there's not 10 feet of snow on the ground.
You don't like snow?
I love snow, and I love Montreal too. Je t'aime Montreal.
In August 2010, the band began recording their 7th studio album with producer Butch Vig, who had previously produced the 2 new tracks for the band's greatest hits album. The album was recorded in Dave Grohl's garage using only analog equipment. The album won 5 Grammys and was nominated for 6. The recording was analog to tape and used no computers, not even to mix or master. Vig said in an interview with MTV that the album was entirely analog until post-mastering. Alongside Wasting Light's release, Foo Fighters released a rockumentary, directed by Academy Award winner James Moll. The film, titled Back and Forth, chronicles the band's career. Then current and past members and producer Butch Vig tell the story of the band through interviews.
Taylor, Nick, congratulations on the film and the new album, both brilliant, really enjoyed them.
Cool.
The documentary's coming out to sort of mark the release of your 7th studio album. How important is it, do you think, for fans to know the story of the band and the history of the band, or can they just appreciate the music?
I think we're
His
trying.
hand was up. His hand was up.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Okay, well, I can only say from being a fan, I love shit like that. Like, I love, you know, I watch every rock documentary. I read all the books. When you're actually in it, it's a bit of a bummer, unless you really like people to know about you and, you know, you're the kind of person, like, you know, who wants to be on reality shows and shit like that. If you're not, and you're somewhat private in your personal life, I feel I am. Feel Nate is as well, and most of us are in the band, really. It's a little hard, it's a little revealing, but I know that, you know, people who are super fans of the band are gonna enjoy it, and it's definitely more dramatic than people are used to from the Foo Fighters, and I think they'll find it a little bit like a more interesting story than they thought it was. Because when we watched it, we all watched it together, because, you know, we say some pretty raw shit on it, you know, we air our emotions, and we kind of really don't sit around talking about that kind of stuff when we're together, you know? It's usually pretty light. Not surface, but light, you know, when we're together, and we get on with work, and, you know, it's fun, and haha, and some jokes, and we don't really argue that much or anything. But we all watched it together, and we didn't beat the hell out of each other or, you know, dissolve the band after it was done, and I think, you know, in a way it was kind of good in a way, because everybody said some shit that they wouldn't normally say right there, and you kind of say it, and you look over at, you know, Dave when I said something like that. It was like,
Were you not concerned then, before you made the film, did you not sit down and think, if we're all coming out on camera and, you know, telling the truth, telling everything as it happened, as it happens, were you not a little bit scared that something might come out that was a bit too shocking for one of you to find out?
A little bit. I remember after doing my interview, like, thinking I gotta call Dave. I gotta talk to him about this, the things that I talked about before he sees it. So yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think
you didn't know, did you?
No, it was okay. Mostly. It's like, it's not everything. I mean, it wasn't just, it's not a complete, this documentary is not a completely soul-bearing experience for the band, but it pushed the boundaries of comfort.
Yeah. It wasn't some kind of monster.
Yeah. Okay.
No, that would have been bad.
And also,
you know, I gotta say that, you know, for the sake of sort of dramatics, the director, James, did a great job. And for the sake of dramatics, you know, he would leave stuff out. So to sort of make it interesting, because I mean, you know, you're explaining. I was really upset at this point because of this. And then you go, but in the end it was actually okay because da 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 da. Well, they didn't put that in.
So
they just stop there and go to the next scene.
Okay.
So thanks, James.
So thanks, James.
Yeah. Brilliant. And then
asshole. I'll make a documentary about your life.
You know, when I first started thinking that it was time we make the history of the band documentary, I was really just thinking about the hardcore fans, you know, the fans that have been with us for 16 years. That we have so much footage that no one's seen before. I thought, well, let's make it for them because who else is going to care about it? So let's just do it for the kids that really love the band. And then I thought about the way we were making the new record, doing it in my home, in the garage, and doing it analog to tape instead of computers, and doing it with Butch Vig. I thought, well, they'll probably want to see that too. And then I thought, wait a minute, if you put the two things together, there's actually kind of more of a story there. And I wasn't the first one to say we should make a movie that they'll show in theaters. Someone said that to me and I thought, okay, that just sounds like a bad idea because who cares, to be honest? Who cares about our story, you know? And then I thought about it and realized, you know, there are a few different stories. Butch and I's relationship goes back 20 years, starts with Nirvana. The Foo Fighters and where we've been in the last 16 years and changing as people and technology and how that's changed and the craft of making albums. People don't use razor blades to cut tapes and make edits anymore. You use a computer. And so it was all a bigger picture. And I felt like now was a good time to do it because of all of those things.
And you mentioned the new album is like, you know, recorded in your home, it's analog on tape. Was it a kind of, I don't know, the music industry these days isn't what we want it to be, let's go back to basics, let's go back to how things used to be and do it like that? You know, was it a chance for you to kind of say, this is how it should be, the good old days of making music is what we want to kind of replicate?
Well, personally, that's the way I've always done it, you know? I've used computers before. We've made a couple albums with computers, and I mean, for me, it just seems so easy to be able to hit the red button and the tapes start whirring and you play, and then that's how you record. So I don't think it was really meant in some kind of retro way. It was like, let's do what we feel most comfortable doing, you know? If that's how we feel most comfortable, then why don't we just do it that way? We can kind of do whatever we want. Let's do it like that, because in doing that, the result is the sound of your band. You know, I'm not really a big fan of music that's made to sound perfect. And as a drummer too, I mean, I'm a drummer. The last thing in the world I want to hear is a drummer that sounds like a machine. You know, that's not real drumming. I don't want to go see a band that plays to click tracks while they're on stage. I don't want to go see a band that has people behind the curtain and computers going and there's only a couple of them up there, but it sounds like an orchestra. That's not real. Fuck that. That's not rock and roll. So, I mean, people do it and people love it, but I don't think it's cool at all.
Well, that's, you know, modern production it really saps the life out of music in that way, because when you record with Pro Tools, there's this visual element to it, and there's much more of an emphasis on everything being perfect to a grid, instead of just using your ears when you record with tape and just, you know, judging it on how it feels and how it sounds.
And the funny thing about it is that those records we're talking about that are perfect, you don't have to play that good for those. You don't have to rehearse a lot, because you're not going to be playing that whole song all the way through. It's just, you know, play a chorus, okay. They'll cut it up, make it sound great, and then they'll repeat it for the next chorus. So it's funny that you don't have to try as hard on perfect records.
It's okay to sound shitty sometimes, you know? We don't walk up on stage and sound like the greatest band in the world. I don't sing on key every time. Our songs aren't the same tempo all the way through. But people come to see us play and they're like, they get excited because it's real, you know?
I've been searching for something never comes, leads to nothing satisfies, getting closer to the prize at the end of the road. All night long I dream of the day, comes around and it's slipping away. Feeling the most, feeling of the life, let me see where it goes. Done, on to the next one, done, and on to the next one, done, and on to the next one, done.
The new album is a bunch of 40-year-old blokes get together in their garage.
Hey, I'm not 40, asshole.
How old are you?
38 when I made this record.
Yeah, but I'm 42, so it even.
I just turned 39.
Just
I guess
turned 39.
evenly, if you put all our ages together, except for Pat, of course. Leaving Pat out of it, we're 40.
Yeah, he's blowing the curve.
Yeah, he's blowing the curve.
So the
Pat
average.
brings it up to like 45.
Was it sort of like, you know, trying to get back to basics, recapture a bit of like musical youth in a sense? You know, it's that in the garage, playing it onto tape.
Musical youth?
Musical youth.
Pass the touchy on the left hand side, the step past the touch. Remember Musical Youth?
I'm going to look it up now when I leave. But
You're a youngster, aren't you?
I'm gonna say no to that though, because it wasn't that, let's go back to how we sounded 15 years ago, and what was that album like, and how do we sound like that again?
I don't think this album sounds anything like those first two records. I don't think the songs are anything like them. The only thing that's similar is the way they were recorded, meaning on tape. So, I don't think, the concept of the records usually kind of come halfway through. We realize what we're doing, and Dave will say, okay. Because it's kind of good to have a concept. I'm not talking lyrically necessarily, but sort of not just for press, but for also just for, how it just, the whole thing feels. It's kind of good to have some sort of conceptual, like, In Your Honor, that's a double record. One side rock, one side acoustic. That was our story on that record. That's what the record was. The last record didn't really have much of a concept, really. I guess it was the blending of the two. But this record is, if there's a concept, we did it in a garage on tape and kind of took it back to analog. And I think that, really, it's not 40-year-old bloke sitting in a garage saying, well, let's try and re-record, Color and the Shape. It was 40-year-old blokes saying, I don't like the way rock music sounds right now. It sounds sterile and cold and inhuman. Let's make a record that shows our warts and all, because that's the way rock and roll sort of used to be. Even the best bands in the world, even the tightest, most perfect rock and roll bands were still human sounding. Music, for the most part, the way music is made these days, and I'm not trying to say, oh, we got to go back in time, throw the computer out the window. Obviously, things should move forward, but I don't know if, filtering music through computers to make them inhumanly perfect for rock and roll is, for me, it's not my bag. I don't like it. I don't even listen to records made that way.
No, it's a garage.
It's actually a garage.
It's just like that.
If you walk through my house and open up the door to the garage, there's a refrigerator right here. There's all my kids' bikes, and there's a minivan in it. And it's about the size of this room. And so we backed the minivan out and put a drum set on that side and some carpets on the floor, and that was it. That's the funny thing, is most people are like, yeah, but you probably have a Learjet in your garage. It's like, no, it's a fucking garage.
Yeah, brilliant. The film, go back to the documentary, there were quite a few sort of revelations that came out in it. There were things like, Pat, when you came back to the band, when you had joined the band and you were saying, when you first turned up, it's like, there's a guy who wants my job. Did you not worry when you made the film that something might come out that would, cause a bit of unrest, a bit of tension in the band, something that not all of you knew?
Well, that's when Dave came in and said, oh, there's going to be some awkward moments in this for everybody. And when he said that, I immediately went like, fuck, what did I say in the film?
Yeah, everybody did that. Everyone started taking inventory. Fuck, what did they put that in there? Yeah.
But then when we went and watched it all together, it was almost like going to it was like cathartic, like some sort of group therapy session, It was great.
Because when we watched it just the five of us. And I remember just, you watch and you see something and you just kind of go,
oh, really?
Okay, next one's a bit of a cliche question, but what is the most rock and roll thing you've ever done? Each of you.
No, we can't talk about that. Come on.
What's the most rock and roll
not
thing
with that thing on.
you could talk about?
We have small children.
Yeah.
Is that rock and roll?
it's the most rock and roll
No,
thing I've ever
that's
done.
why
we can't answer that question.
Yeah.
Fucking Einstein.
I think you already did that.
I went to the drugstore and bought 3,000 condoms.
But obviously, there were things in the film as well. It shows when you were going on tour, when you started touring, when you were still quite a new band, I suppose. And there was alcohol before shows and things like this. I mean, do you still act like the? I didn't understand.
Is this Hello Magazine? What is this interview?
But now that you've got kids, has it sort of grounded you? You don't do these things.
Absolutely. Do you have any kids? Well, when you do, wake up with a fucking hangover and hang out with your kid for 2.5 hours. There's nothing more humbling than feeling like, oh my God, I have to change my life now. And you just change your life.
Yeah, and it's something that comes through in the film. Like, a lot. You know, one of the best moments I think is when you were playing the guitar, your daughter's poking you on the back, saying you said we could go swimming. So is that something that you guys wanted to come through in the film so that people can see?
You know, the great thing about that scene in the movie is that was every day, all day long. It wasn't just some one-off moment that happened. I mean, you'd be in there and you'd be playing a guitar track, and Dave's kids would walk in with like cookies that they had baked, and you know, make coffee for you. You know, it was just that was the vibe the whole time.
Later, it wasn't in the first cut we saw, and I remember watching it when they showed the recording part. And I just thought, I didn't know why, but I just thought this isn't really capturing what it was like there. And then they added that scene, and I was like, okay, yeah, now this is what it felt like.
It's funny. I think that people have this idea of what it's like to be in a rock band that, you know, you're conditioned to believe from rock biographies and movies and videos. And, you know, what we do is really simple, and it's totally like normal and human. I mean, I think that Nate has one of the best quotes in the whole movie where he says, you know, I've come to accept it that I'm an adult in a rock band. And to me, it just sort of made sense. Like, we're musicians, you know? And yeah, we were young a long time ago, and we did a lot of fucking crazy shit. But as you get older, it's just, you just grow up, you know?
I think we had the best of both worlds, because it's like when you go out on tour like this, you know, or when you're at rehearsal or whatever with the band, it's like you kind of revert into like a high school kind of thing. You know, that's just kind of what being in a band is. A bunch of guys in a room telling dick jokes or whatever. But then, you know, we all have kids and we go home and you're just dad, and you take out the trash and you do the dishes and your kids yell at you, and, you know, you're just dad. And it forces you to become an adult.
Despite initially announcing a break after supporting Wasting Light, Grohl stated in January 2013 that the band had started writing material for an 8th studio album. On February 20, 2013, at the Brit Awards, Grohl said he was resuming work on the album the following day. On November 12, 2015, a surprise release following a month-long countdown clock on the Foo Fighters website revealed the free EP Saint Cecilia, including a single of the same name. Alongside its release, Grohl announced that the band would be going on an indefinite hiatus. Grohl announced that the band would spend much of 2017 recording their 9th studio album. On June 1, 2017, their new single Run was released. Run topped the US Billboard Mainstream Rock Songs chart the following month. The band confirmed touring keyboardist Rami Jaffee was officially the 6th member of the group. On June 20, 2017, the band announced that their new album Concrete and Gold would be released in September. In October 2019, the band announced that they were recording their 10th studio album based on demos by Grohl. In November 2019, the band began releasing a series of EPs under the umbrella name of the Foo Files, largely consisting of previously released B-sides and live performances. By February 2020, Grohl announced that the new album was complete, but by May, it was delayed indefinitely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, saying, "We've kind of shelved it for now to figure out exactly when it's going to happen." On February 10th, 2021, Foo Fighters were announced as one of the 2021 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees in their first year of eligibility, as their debut album had been released 25 years prior. On May 12, 2021, Foo Fighters were announced as one of 6 performer inductees.
It's a relief that people finally get to hear these songs that we recorded a year ago. I mean, when we wrote these songs maybe 2 years ago, we started recording like mid-2019 with the intention that this album was going to be the soundtrack to our 25th anniversary. It's our 10th album. We're gonna go on this massive world tour. We're gonna play stadiums and festivals, and we're making this really upbeat sort of danceable record because it's gonna be the biggest party of our lives. And then everything went and just stopped.
On February 25th, 2022, the Foo Fighters released a comedy horror film, Studio 666, directed by B.J. McDonnell. It stars the band members as themselves alongside Will Forte, Whitney Cummings, Jeff Garlin, and Jenna Ortega.
Foo
Fighters, you gotta get me a record.
It's our 10th album. We gotta break the mold on this one. Let's go somewhere we've never been.
This place is amazing.
Do you guys get this overwhelming sense of debt? Whoa. Doesn't really seem like the right fit. Whoa, it's rad. That was weird. We're a fun bunch. I mean, we really are. Like, I always tell people that when we show up to an airport, there's usually 3 or 4 vans to take the band to the hotel. But we all still climb into one. It still works that way. Like, we still feel like this. And I can honestly say that we have more fun than any other band in the world. I think it's true.
On March 25th, 2022, longtime drummer Taylor Hawkins died in his room at the Casa Medina Hotel in Bogota, Colombia. Following the announcement, the band put out a heartfelt statement memorializing Hawkins. The Foo Fighters family is devastated by the tragic and untimely loss of our beloved Taylor Hawkins. His musical spirit and infectious laughter will live on with all of us forever, the band said on Twitter. Our hearts go out to his wife, children, and family, and we ask that their privacy be treated with the utmost respect in this unimaginably difficult time. Concerns about the drummer's health first arose on Friday night when he began complaining of chest pains prior to the band's headline performance at the Estéreo Picnic Festival in Bogota. His condition subsequently deteriorated, and efforts to revive him by a private doctor and city emergency responders failed. According to investigators, an autopsy showed that Hawkins' heart weighed double that of men his age. A mixture of around 10 different substances were found in a urine sample. It is likely that he suffered a cardiovascular collapse after binging on a cocktail of drugs, including heroin, marijuana, and opioids. The Foo Fighters were scheduled to perform that night at the Estéreo Picnic Festival as part of their ongoing South American tour. The festival stage was turned into a candlelight vigil for Hawkins.
When we started the Foo Fighters, it wasn't just like starting a band. It wasn't just like putting some guys together with instruments. We were young and we were not finished playing music. But more than that, we just needed something to look forward to. We needed something to like get us through life. And if you think of it that way, then every day you wake up and you really appreciate that you have this. I feel so fortunate that I'm alive and that I'm in the Foo Fighters and I get to share this with all of my friends.
The incredible career of the Foo Fighters hasn't been an easy one. Despite the struggles, the band has continued to work through it and return to the stage with hit after hit. After the sudden and tragic death of Taylor Hawkins, there is a lot of uncertainty about the future of the band. But if the legacy of the Foo Fighters has proven anything, it's that the group can grow and evolve. And the show must go on.